Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I'm Jason Bent, and in today's video I'm actually doing something that I haven't done on any other videos, and that's doing a follow-up to last week's video. The purpose of that video is to address a lot of the common questions that I've received over the past year. So as that video was released and people started watching it and I saw the comments start to come in, I actually realized that there were many things that I wanted to cover that I didn't cover in that video, and I was reminded by reading the comments. So this video is going to be a part 2 to that video where I'm gonna cover some of the other things that I really wanted to share my thoughts on and give answers to you guys. And then there's one question that I've been asked probably more than anything, and I'm gonna save that one to the end, and I cannot believe that I did not include that in the last video. So let's go ahead and get into some of the other things that I wanted to highlight. The first thing that I'm gonna cover deals with the Outfeed Support. In the previous video, I discussed how you can extend the infeed or outfeed beds of the jointer. In the video, I did discuss that you can also do it on the outfeed side of the planer, and the way that you would do that is you can get these aluminum extrusions, and this is just attached through these two bolts here, just like it is on the jointer bed, and it's attached just like this, and then you're able to place the outfeed support on here and take it on and off as you see fit. Now, as you can see, I obviously do not have mine installed because I haven't really found that much of a need for it. However, I am considering going ahead and putting this on the outfeed side of the planer, and I'll talk about the next thing that I wanted to discuss in this video that has to do with this. Since we were talking about the outfeed support and installing those, I wanted to talk about Snipe. This has been my experience with Snipe with this machine. Have I got it? Yes. Have I ever owned a planer that I did not experience some sort of snipe? No. Now, to caveat that, I have taken certain steps with different machines to ensure that I have minimal snipe or no snipe, or I've done things to work around the fact that the machine is giving me a little bit of snipe. So going back to the reason why I'm actually considering installing the outfeed support is because when installed correctly, it can give that upward motion to help eliminate the snipe as it comes out of the machine. And I say that upward motion because the way that I work around it in my shop, as I'm feeding a board into the machine, I'm simply applying a little bit of upward pressure, and as I'm on the outfeed side taking the board out, I'm doing the same thing. And what that allows is me supporting the board, so when that weight comes out from being under two rollers and it flops up a little bit and gives that snipe, I don't have to worry about that. So that is the solution that I do in my shop. Do I experience snipe on this machine from time to time? Yes. Could I get rid of it completely? Yes. Is it really that big of a deal to me? Not necessarily. For the most part, I usually leave my boards longer anyways, so in the event that I needed to get rid of that snipe, I could, but for me, it's just really not that big of a deal, which is why I haven't gone, to painstaking lengths to ensure that that is on here and installed perfectly. What I will say is that the times where I've experienced the worst snipe is when I don't lock down the actual bed. And what I mean by that is this raises and lowers. When you make an adjustment, it's supposed to be locked back down. And I will say that when I don't lock this down, as I'm putting boards through, I can actually see this bed move a little bit because it's not locked in place. And when that happens, it creates a little bit worse snipe. So the solution is make the adjustment, lock it back down. I definitely wanted to highlight the snipe issue in this video because it does exist. It exists on every planer. Snipe exists because of the way a planer operates, but there are ways to correct the snipe. And I only wanted to bring that up because, and this has nothing to do with the hammer machine, right? Every planer that I've owned, I've had that. I've had Powermatic, I've had DeWalt, I've had Porter Cable, I've now had this hammer. Every single one of the planers produced some sort of snipe in some capacity at some point. And every single one of those machines, I was able to minimize it or completely eliminate it by taking the time to ensure the machine was set up properly or doing the right things as I'm loading wood into the machine and taking wood out of the machine. I think that people have this misconception that if somebody gets a new planer and I'm gonna ask the question, does it give you any snipe? And the answer is yes, that you just completely write off that machine. That's not how it works. Whether a machine produces snipe or it doesn't mean it's a good or bad machine. It just means the machine needs to be adjusted in order to get rid of the snipe. All right, so in the last video, I didn't give a really good detailed view of what you're gonna be seeing over on this side. This is where you make all the adjustments to your planer bed. I wanna talk about engaging and disengaging the rollers and raising and lowering the bed and locking it in place. Because I had mentioned that before, when I was talking about the snipe issue. So in order for you to engage the rollers, you have to actually pull this lever and let it go into the machine. And so that means when I turn this on, those rollers are going to be engaged. If I don't want the rollers to spin, I pull this out and lock it back down. So over here, if I was making an adjustment and I wanted to lock it down, this is what I was referring to by locking it down. I turn this lever, it locks this in place. If I was to leave this unlocked, it can move. I'm not going to be able to move it, but when a force is applied down to it, it can shift a little bit. That's why it is very important to make sure that you lock this down. So when I'm making adjustments, I make my adjustment, I lock it down, I run my board through. It's time for me to make an adjustment. I lock it down and it's good to go. I already have to come here to make the adjustment. That's why the handle is right here, and I can make my adjustments as I need to. And one thing of note on this handle is it does want to have one of these releases to where you can turn the handle. You just have to pull it out and you can adjust it any direction and it'll lock back in place. All right, so next I'm going to cover the digital readout gauge, which I cannot believe I did not do this in the last video because I get asked so many questions about this. Specifically, did I get the imperial version or metric, or should I get the imperial version or metric? Well, that's completely up to the person buying it. When I did my order, I did not even think twice about one or the other. I didn't even think to ask, if I'm being completely honest. What I can tell you is, so this reads out right here in imperial. On this scale over here on the right-hand side, it is in both inch and millimeters. Right here, it says 1 full revolution equals 2 millimeters. So you can still use this in a metric way. It's just going to read out in imperial. I would assume that they offer a metric one, and this would read out in millimeters. And at some point, I might actually replace this, seeing as how now I primarily do use millimeters. And as you can see, as I turn it, the readout changes, and we're getting higher. So now I'm at 6 inches. And to dial this in, it's fairly straightforward. You can actually take this out and turn it to get it set on the number that you need it to be on or close to it. And then you just make cuts until you know the exact thickness, and then you can set this. For instance, I have a piece that's just over 3/4 of an inch. I cut it, it's 3/4 of an inch. I set that to 3/4 of an inch, and then I make sure that it is locked in place. And from that point forward, it's good to go. And I will say that this has been very, very accurate. I typically use calipers when I'm running things through a planer. So to be honest with you, I don't really use this all that much. It's more just to get a rough idea and a starting point for me. The next thing has to do with dust collection. And unfortunately, I'm not gonna sit here and run 25 board feet of lumber through and make multiple passes just to show you a before and after. I know how rude of me, right? But what I can say is that the dust collection on it is really good. I have a 2 horsepower dust collector in my shop. It is hard ducted into the shop. And I even have a fairly long piece of flex hose that goes from my blast gate to the machine. So that way I can flip it over from joiner to planer. And I'm very pleased with it. At the end of milling up a lot of lumber, yeah, I'm gonna have some chips that are in the machine. I'm going to have a little bit of chips on the floor. It doesn't get 100%. I would think that if I had like a 5 horsepower unit, that it would probably get just about everything. I was just very surprised by the effectiveness of the dust collection because I didn't have much experience with the joiner planer combo beforehand, and the way that the head and everything is designed, it's bound to have some stuff get out because nothing is truly fully enclosed at any time. But when it comes to the dust collection, I have absolutely no complaints on the effectiveness of my dust collector on this machine and it leaving a mess all over the place. I'm not concerned about that at all. So what I've done now is I've gone ahead and raised the infeed bed all the way up just so I can easily pass this over, because I want to talk about utilizing this guard as opposed to the traditional pork chop style guard that opens and closes by itself. This was something that I was very up in the air about before ever using the machine. I just felt like it was strange, it would get in the way. How am I gonna, compensate for that? You can probably see this on the camera, but it does have a curved appearance. Matter of fact, let me just pull it out and show you. If you look right here, it does have a curve, and I believe that is for a very specific reason. It really allows for your hands to simply slide right over the top, and all the while, it's always being protected by the blade guard. There's always something in between your hands and the blade. Now, I could easily just move this and just make cuts like this if I wanted to, but that's crazy. Why would I do that? So I learned very quickly that this is actually a very nice, effective tool. So it took a little bit of time to get used to, because in the beginning I had a tendency to do this. I would move up to the guard, I would pick my hand up, and then I would apply the pressure on the front side, and I would just try to ignore this altogether. But then I quickly realized, why don't I just follow the board and you can ride your hand right over the top of it. It's so effortless. I actually prefer this style guard now to the pork chop style. It's just very nice to be able to push a board through, maintain contact, and just slide right over that. And that's why I think that that is curved the way that it is. Also because obviously the cutter head, but when it's up like this, that means nothing. So it just easily, the hand, I don't even have to lift my palm off the board. I just push it through, I lift my fingers up, and it goes right over the top. So let me go ahead and make a quick single test cut. That also gave you an opportunity to hear what the machine sounds like. And as you could probably tell in the video, it's very quiet. But that is the wonderful quality right off the cutter head. And again, it's such a smooth motion. I really, really like having this style guard versus the pork chop now that I've used it for so long. Now there's 3 questions I want to close this video out by answering. The first question is, did I consider any other brands that make a joiner planer combo when I was trying to decide if I wanted to get a joiner planer combo? And the short answer is no, I did not. I did not consider any other options. I was able to use this machine at Jay Bates' shop a few years back when I was over there. That was kind of my introduction to it. I was really impressed by the machine. That's the machine that I wanted to go with. That's just a personal preference. I don't have any experience with Jet or any of the other companies that make the joiner planer combos. I base it off of reputation and people that I know that also own the machine. The next thing is do I like the machine? And I actually went back and watched the video, and I don't know if I ever truly came out and said whether or not I was happy with the machine. So the short answer to that is yes, I like the machine. It has been a dream to use. I love the fact that it saves so much space, and I don't really have any major complaints with it. Now, to close this video out, the $1 million question, and I still cannot believe that I didn't include this in the first video because this was kind of the reason for doing it. The $1 million question is, if space was no issue, if I was to build my dream shop and I had plenty of space and I wasn't as concerned with the space-saving abilities of this machine, which, to be clear, at the end of the day, this was the biggest reason why I went with this machine in this shop. So if none of that mattered anymore, would I still buy a joiner planer combo, or would I have 2 separate machines? And this is still somewhat of a difficult question for me to answer. If you'd have asked me 6 months ago, I probably would have said yes, 2 separate machines, always, because why not have that convenience? It would be fantastic, right? I go from the jointer to the planer. To me, that's really the only, downside that I can think of to this machine is the fact that you have to change it over. That, and I would say the length of the beds. So those would be the only 2 real things that would entice me to maybe have 2 separate machines. But now when people ask me, I look at it from the perspective of, I'm not out here milling a couple hundred board feet of lumber every day. I might be milling lumber once a month, twice a month for a specific project. It might be a little bit, it might be a lot. So changing the machine over for me is really not an inconvenience. So I don't really know if I gave an answer. Sure, it'd be awesome to have 2 separate machines and not have to worry about changing anything over. That's a bonus. If you're somebody that doesn't want to change a machine over and that you're absolutely dreading that and you're milling all kinds of lumber every day, well then a joiner planer combo machine may not be the best choice for you. For me in my shop, the way that I work, it's fantastic. I love it. And if I did have the space to have 2 machines, I'll be honest with you, I would probably keep this machine as my jointer, seeing as how it gives me 16 inches of capacity. And then I would just get a planer, like 20-inch planer, and I would just have that, and I would never have to change the machine over. The machine's great. I have no complaints about the machine, other than the fact that occasionally I have to change it over. If I had all the space in the world, I would love to have all kinds of tools. I'd love to have a 5-foot by 10-foot CNC. I'd love to have multiple band saws. I'd love to, you know, have multiple assembly tables. I'd love to have a workbench. There's all kinds of things that I would like, but I don't really think that's the discussion. My experience after using the machine for as long as I have now, it's a great machine. The idea of a jointer planer combo is a great idea. There are other companies out there. This is what I have experience with, and I can tell you, I'm not disappointed. So that's gonna do it for part 2 of the A3-41 overview, Q&A, whatever you wanna call it. And I apologize for not putting all these things in the first video, but now you have a second video that you can reference. And if you haven't watched the first, now you know half of the things I talked about. Go check out part 1 and get the rest of the information. As always, everybody, thank you for watching. And if you want to find out more about me, head over to bentswoodworking.com. Until next time, everybody, get out in the shop, try something new, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks.